Alright, I'm doing pads and rotors on this 05 Civic. It's going to be the same for 03 to 05 for sure. Probably the same for the earlier models as well. Alright, once you got the wheel off, you're going to need to, well, since we are doing caliper and pad, we're going to take the whole caliper. Since we're doing the rotor and pad, we're going to take the whole caliper off, which involves taking this bolt and then the lower mounting bolt off. If you're just doing pads, you can just unbolt it here and on the adjacent end, and your caliper itself will come out while leaving the bracket in place. But if you're replacing a rotor, then obviously you got to take the bracket and caliper off so you can get your rotor off, because the bracket will be in the way. So you're looking at two of these. Alright, once you got your two mounting bolts out, you just slide this off of here. They usually stick a little bit. You should have saw it move there. So you just pry it off, and you don't want to let it hang from this brake hose here, or you can damage it. It will collapse internally, and then your brakes will stick. So I need something here to set this caliper on so it doesn't hang from this brake hose. That's just momentary. Do not do that or it'll fall. A lot of times these rotors will stick, but this one's ready to come right off, so it'll just slide off. And that's why you don't do that. I caught it though. Meow. Anyways. That's interesting. Alright, that was the first for me actually. It was loose, but it wouldn't come off. I think this inside rim here, it was touching the outer rim here, and because of all the rust and stuff, you can see where there's a shelf built up. It wasn't wanting to come off, so I had to get behind it and beat it with the sledge a few times back and forth to get it to pop off. Never had that happen before. That's neat. Slide your new rotor on. Now, a lot of new rotors come with this packing grease so that they don't rust while they're in storage, and you need brake parts cleaner to take it off. But this one is dry. It does not have that. Also, don't touch the surface of the rotor with your dirty hands, or it will affect your stopping. You don't want grease and crap on there. So I'll just have to push this back like that. Well, yeah, we gotta get new pads in here. All right, I'll do pads now. So your pads should just pop out like that. Both sides, you gotta wiggle it a little to get them out. Same on this side, it'll just pop out. And then we need a C-clamp to push this piston back in, because the newer pads are going to be thicker and then they won't fit over your new rotor. So you got to make space for that. Kind of forgot my big C-clamp today, so we're improvising here. That's why I have this socket under here, because it doesn't quite fit. So you situate your C-clamp like this, or the opposite way, it doesn't really matter. And you leave your old back pad in until you get this piston pushed in all the way. So you just turn the C-clamp, if I can hold that damn thing in place, and your piston, you'll see that it'll retract in. Just keep turning it until it stops. Okay, so you can see the piston's fully in, so now I can take the C-clamp off of here and pop this old pad out. Alright, a quick note on the hardware. These little retaining clips here, some pads will come with new ones, some won't. Like, I don't believe these did. So if you do come with new ones, you can try to swap them out. It's a real pain in the ass to get them in and out. You want to try to leave them in place, or replace them with your new ones if you can. But oftentimes what you run into is you can't get the pad in once these retaining clips are in there. So sometimes you have no choice but to skip it. You want them in there, and you want the pad as tight as possible. That way it doesn't rattle around while you're going down the road, anything like that. But sometimes you'll run into the scenario where you just can't get it in there because the little fin on the end of the pad is just a ½ millimeter too long or something like that. So it's not a huge deal if you can't get it in with the retaining clips in, but if you can, you want to try to leave them in place. Also, usually they'll only come with one of these squealers. This hits your rotor, it lets you know it's time to replace when it gets low. And you want to put this on the back side where the piston is, because that pad will wear down more than the outer pad, because there's no piston on that side for most cars. So if you only have one squealer per pad, usually your box will only have two with the squealer, whereas the others do not. Then you want to make sure you get the squealer on the back side. Same goes for these as with the rotor. Don't touch the surface with your nasty fingers. They usually have these tapered edges right here, so if you need to push it in, you push on these tapered edges. That way you're not touching the part that actually contacts the rotor. Okay, there she is. So I need to get my mounting bolts back in. It'll slide right over sometimes. So if you have difficulty where it's a tight fit and you can't quite get it over the rotor there, what you do is you come in at an angle to where you use this tapered edge to your advantage. You pivot it like this and come in with the tapered edge, so you'll have more space to get it over the rotor, and then you can force it over. If you come straight in like this and the tolerance is too tight, you'll catch the edge of the pad there and it won't want to go. So come from the bottom or the top and use that tapered edge to your advantage. Alright, so your mounting bolts for the whole assembly, the bracket ones here, it's 80 foot-pounds, which is really high. It explains why it was so hard for me to get them off of there. Usually it's like 50, 60 foot-pounds, but on this, with these big bolts, it's saying 80 foot-pounds. And then if you take these out, either to grease the rod internally or just because you did the pads or whatever reason, these are 25 to 30 foot-pounds. 80 for the big one, 25, 30 on the little. Alright, I got all the brake components torqued back down. I wanted to note, when you put this wheel on, okay, you want to make sure you torque this wheel properly. And this is actually how you get quote-unquote warped rotor symptom. Rotors don't actually warp. What will happen is if you don't torque this properly, it'll go on slightly cockeyed, which makes the rotor slightly cockeyed. So then it wobbles microscopically in between your pads, and then you get hot spots on it, and that's how you get that thump in your brake pedal. So this is a 4-lug. 5-lug, you would do a star pattern, crisscross. You never want to torque one next to the other. On a 4-lug, you want to go back and forth this way, back and forth this way, back and forth this way, back and forth this way. Small car like this, you torque your wheel on to 80 or 90 foot-pounds of torque, but you want to do it in steps. So you want to do like 30, 60, 90. So like torque them all in the order I said, to 30 foot-pounds, then 60 foot-pounds, and then ultimately 80 or 90, whatever you're comfortable with. Either should be fine. That helps walk that on there so that it goes on flush, and then go over it a couple times after you're done and make sure none of them loosened up. Do that and make sure it mounts on there flush and you don't get warped rotor symptom. This is really random, but this is the first car I've ever been able to see completely through the other side, through the wheel well. That's weird. Okay, and then one last thing. After you've done both sides, or if you're the type of person to do one side, whatever, by compressing that piston in, you push brake fluid back up, and so your piston isn't quite in contact with everything. It's not out as far as it needs to be. So when you first get in, if you just pull out and go to hit the brakes, they're going to want to go to the floor. So what you want to do is start the car, get in, and then lightly and slowly press the brake pedal down over and over, about halfway down, no further, until you feel it firm back up to normal, and then you're good to go.